feel like sometimes life is really mental.
Dude, that's actually a really good name for a podcast.
You have to choose to believe and know that it will happen. You just have to kind of like just tell yourself that and then work for it. Because if you don't work on it consistently for a while, nothing will change.
Hello everyone, welcome back to Really Mental. We have an amazing guest today, Prateek Kuhad. We're going to be talking about anxiety and letting go of attachment. If you're excited for this episode today, please share it to a friend, ask a question, like, subscribe, follow us at Really Mental Podcast. It's going to be a really interesting chat to talk about Prateek's journey and just where he's gotten today. I think anxiety is such an interesting topic, and a lot of people are facing it today, and they're feeling these feelings of anxiousness, and they don't know where they want to go, and they're trying to attach themselves to certain things that aren't necessarily healthy for them and trying to control their future. How have you found that in your life, Will?
Definitely. I mean, I feel as though letting go is one of those sayings where it's like so much easier said than done with certain things, because naturally as people we get attached to certain aspects of our life. Maybe it's a job, maybe it's a friend, a girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever it is. So when it comes to attachments, there are, those natural levels of anxiety that comes with it. And I think that makes letting go pretty hard. One thing I have realized recently and I've been really working on is not becoming my feelings. Over the past couple of weeks, I've had like really intense emotions that I really feel like have come up from like a place where I probably shoved them down years ago. And I didn't know what to do with them. And honestly, I was like resonating with them a lot because I would just become them. And I would get fixated on the fact that I was having these thoughts and feelings in the first place. And partly as well, that comes down to, fear of being alone, I guess. And so in dealing with these emotions, I realized that I don't have to like hold them at a distance. And I could see it as like, my therapist was telling me, it's like, if I hold, say like a stick for a long period of time and I try and push it away, my arm gets sore and I get exhausted from doing it. So instead of doing that, I've just tried to let the stick, so to speak, just lay like in front of me and not try and resist it. And that gives me a lot of peace because there are a lot of things that we aren't able to control as people. So that's something to keep in mind. And with that background, we're really excited to speak with Prateek, an Indian singer-songwriter and musician. And he's best known for his track Cold Mess. He released a new album late last year. He is so talented. And we're really excited to welcome him on the show today to talk about anxiety and letting go. Welcome, Prateek, to Really Mental.
For those that don't know who you are that are listening, can you tell them a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, totally. So I'm a musician, singer, songwriter. I grew up in this town called Jaipur in India, which is a relatively small city by Indian standards. It's still a really big city because it's like 4 million people. I grew up there, went to high school in Jaipur, and then moved to New York when I was 18. So I lived in New York for about 5 years there. In college, I went to NYU, and through that kind of decided to get into music. Before that, I was not. I went to college for like math and economics, and then I pivoted a little bit. I was like, okay, I'm going to do music instead. Moved back to India, and I've been doing music since. I just did a US tour earlier this year, a UK tour, and we're just starting the India tour now, which is going to go until December.
Wow. So much to unpack in that journey.
I wanted to delve into the area when you were at NYU and graduating university, and then you decided to go become a singer-songwriter. What was that decision? How did you make that decision to go from economics to music?
So India is, and I think everywhere is a little bit like that. Usually people are a little wary about getting into the art just because it's definitely, less stable and easy than just getting a job and stuff, right? And especially in India, it's even more so because you don't see a lot of families like being encouraging. My parents are really, really progressive, really chill, thankfully. When I wanted to do this, nobody stopped me. But just growing up, I just never thought about it. So it was just easy to do something that was safe, like math and economics. I didn't have any like big dreams or anything. I was a pretty simple person. And but all through this, I just always loved music. I really never really considered doing it as a career till New York. And that's why I think like New York really shaped me as a person and is kind of pivotal in just me being who I am today. I mean, just in general, also culturally, it's so different and so vibrant, and there's just so much going on. I feel like the city really makes you an individual, and you can really live and be yourself and be really never feel really judged because nobody really judges you there. Versus India is the complete opposite.
During that journey of moving to New York, how did you feel? And especially in those parts where you were feeling really low and stuff, what was going through your brain? And did you have those negative thoughts and those doubts? And how did you deal with it?
I mean, it was rough, but I just usually just push through things in general. Even now, that's kind of how I am. If something goes wrong or if stuff gets really tough, my tendency is usually to like double down even instead of just kind of, getting scared of the situation and escaping it. I try that. I just instinctively do that. So I think it was that as well. It was really tough, but I just was like, okay, I need to figure this out. I think like my social anxiety also kind of started from there because in living in Jaipur, I never really had social anxiety because again, it was such a close-knit community and there was so many like friends I already had. I never really thought about anything like that. But I think my first year in college is what really, just because I felt really isolated, I started feeling really like underconfident about myself.
When it comes to social anxiety, where are you at with that now? Like, do you feel like you've broken through that, or is that just something that's just always a journey?
Yeah, I've made a lot of progress with my anxiety overall. When I became a musician and started doing this professionally, it's crazy because when you're doing this, you're thrown into social situations all the fucking time. All the time. Because you're playing shows and you're meeting fans and you have to be like, deal with all kinds of people and events and parties and like just you're working with people all the it's a very social profession, right?
Yeah.
Especially if you're out there and touring.
I feel like can sometimes feel like you have to be a social person to be in music. It's like, how can you fit in if you're not because of all those things you have to do?
Absolutely. Which is weird because on the other side, I feel like music is such a solitary thing. Sometimes expressing yourself and talking about your own inner feelings and you're being vulnerable, especially for somebody like me who's a songwriter. And I write a lot of my songs, most of my songs myself. And it's usually at points when I'm feeling really vulnerable and really open and honest. And it's hard to be 100% that around other people. And sometimes you really just hit that rawness only when you're by yourself, I feel like. I've struggled to be not weird in social situations. Like I would always like say something or do something and I would be like, what the heck, man? And it's just social anxiety because it's not like with my friends, I'm completely normal, but it's just the moment you're in social situations, you get anxious and you start to either recede or be or overcompensating for something and you do stupid things out of anxiety. Getting thrown into this profession, I just had to cope, sort of because I was just in social situations so much that for a few years it's like slowly got better. And then I just did a bunch of things, man. I just like researched a lot about just anxiety and mental health in general. And I started eating healthier and experimenting with my diet. I kind of know the kind of stuff I eat which makes me cranky and puts me like if I eat certain things for too long on a regular basis, I can sense that suddenly 3 weeks later I'm just more anxious every day, or I'm like I tend to get more depressed. So I cut those things out of my diet. I work out very regularly. That really like was a game changer. And then just like therapy helped, which was more recent for me. I tried it a few times before, but this year I really found a therapist I liked, and that just really like suddenly did another little jump. And then just kind of practice. I think you just have to live and be patient and have faith that it will kind of fix if you make these baby steps and do all the things right.
Yeah. If you were to like summarize for those listening that are struggling with social anxiety, 3 main things that they can do to help with their social anxiety, what would those 3 main things be?
I think I would really say the main thing, at least for me, that really helped is just overall health. I think your body and your mind is really connected. And I think what we eat is a big part of how our brain works. I tried different things and I've narrowed down on something that actually worked. So it could be anything. It could be like maybe dairy isn't good for you, maybe gluten isn't good for you, maybe it is. For some people, it's completely fine. Maybe in moderation, it's okay. I'm a vegetarian, just more because of ethical reasons. But, again, just like even macros, like how much protein or carbohydrates you're having. So again, you kind of have to figure that out. And then exercise is the other huge thing, which really, I see a stark difference. If I don't work out for like 2 or 3 weeks, if I like too long a break, I start to feel a little crummy and I can just mentally feel it. And if I just work out like twice a week, if nothing, it's just, if I do pull in a good workout like twice a week, I feel great. I can immediately see that, overall, my mind is just a bit more positive, a bit more level-headed. Otherwise, my instinctive or my natural tendency is just start being negative about things immediately. So you have to do a bit of everything and overall improve your mental health, and then everything kind of gets better. It's not like one thing. I feel like people just think about like one thing and see like, oh, it's I've got anxiety and I've got to control that. But if you really start like looking further in, you realize there's a lot of other things, or like there's thought patterns that we get into, or negative cycles. I feel like a lot of people do that, and I've seen people doing
Yeah.
that, and I used to do that a lot. Or you're being harsh on yourselves, or you're like repressing something too much. I mean, there's just so many things. We're so complicated. And
Yeah.
the more you think about it, you realize everything's kind of connected, and you suddenly a switch goes off and things get better and you just overall feel better. So it takes time, man. It's definitely a journey. It takes time. And ultimately, nobody knows yourself better than you. And you have to tinker with yourself a little bit and try different things. But it's really important to have faith. I think that would be the third thing. Like just knowing that it will happen, because nothing is impossible. You have to choose to believe and know that it will happen. You just have to kind of like just tell yourself that and then work for it. Because if you don't work on it consistently for a while, nothing will change. And if you don't have faith, you'll give up in like a week, and then you're just back to the same cycle
Yeah.
again. And that's the tough one. That's really like the toughest one.
I love those three ones you picked: health, exercise, and faith, positive thinking. Some powerful ones for sure. When it comes to these changes that you made, did you notice that you wanted to surround yourself with, say, slightly different people?
Yeah, I think I've definitely started being more selective about the people I share my time with now. I usually want to feel compassionate towards everybody. And if somebody's the kind of person who's not the ideal person for me to be around with, somebody who's negative or just, sometimes people just take your energy a lot. I don't know how to explain it, like, or just bring you down. I will always try my best for a bit to help them first, or at least try to talk to them. I don't immediately recede. I give a little bit of my time in the beginning, but if that doesn't work, like I'll not sacrifice my mental health to be around anybody. There's a fine balance. If you go too far with it, like everybody has a low point. My family, like no matter how negative somebody becomes, or if I feel like somebody's really unhealthy for me, at some level, like I'm never going to abandon them, right? Because it's my family. I mean, I'm grateful and very fortunate to have a very supportive and healthy family around me. But yeah, if I meet a stranger and they're really like, sucking the energy out of me, which some people are just really like that, then I'll be pretty quick to just make a mental note and be like, don't spend too much time with this person.
Yeah, I think it's really important the types of people that you surround yourself with and the types of people who are there for you when you are at your all-time low as well and when you are struggling. I wanted to go into this if you were comfortable, but was there ever a time in your life where you were at an all-time rock bottom low, and how did you deal with that and get to a place that you are today?
One of my biggest hits, and actually the song that really changed everything around for me, is from this EP called Cold Mess, and the title track was Cold Mess, which is the one that got really popular. I got my label deal right after that. It was on this list that of, like Obama's like year-end playlist, which is pretty like
Yeah.
it's a pretty popular thing online. It ended up on that in 2019. Just got really pretty popular in India, which is pretty crazy because I don't think, and maybe I'm wrong, but I really don't think there's a single English song by an Indian artist in India that just ever got popular, even moderately. Like, I mean, Indians actually listen to a lot of English music, but there's no Indian artist who's ever done it before. So it was really pivotal for me. And right before the release, I kind of had hit rock bottom because I had a pretty tough relationship. I had like a lot of issues with my manager at the time, and it was not a very healthy environment either. And just before the release was coming out, like just a lot of deals kind of fell apart. So I decided the beginning of 2018 to quit music. I was like, I'm done. I can't deal with this anymore. Nothing is working out. And my manager at the time was quitting on me. And suddenly I was going to be completely alone. Suddenly I was going to have like nobody. I was like in months and year into a breakup. So everything was, I was just like, I have nothing going on for me. Screw this. I'm done with music. I'm gonna like go do my MBA or something. I was like, seriously gonna like apply for like do my GMATs and go do my MBA. And I was like, I'm gonna just keep this album, go do my MBA, and I'm gonna start looking for labels over the next few years. Maybe if I feel like it, or I'll just get into finance again. I don't know. But I can't do this on my own anymore. And then one small thing happened, like I think just one of the deals that that had kind of reversed happened. So that's all I need like a little bit of hope. So I don't know if that's luck or if it's just the fact that I just kind of stayed on and didn't make any compulsive decisions. But the moment that happened, I was like, all right, fine. I just kind of latched onto it and went with it anyway. And then slowly, like over the next couple of weeks, got together, things started coming together a little bit and it worked out. And I did end up releasing that album. That gives you a lot of confidence because you feel like, okay, now it's actually sustainable. Like I'm financially doing well now. Like I can actually do this for the rest of my life. But till that point, I never thought I could do it for the rest of my life. I just was like always on rocky territory because it was up and down. And I was
Yeah.
like, what the hell is happening? So it took me a while to adjust to that. But I don't know, man. Like I said, like instinctively, I don't give up that easily. But at the same time, weirdly, I keep telling myself that like I'll give up whenever I want to. I don't know. It's like I have a
Yeah.
weird way of dealing with it. It's strange. Like a weird metaphor analogy is like when I go on runs, I used to run a lot and I used to do long distance running, like 15K, 20K. And I would always tell myself that, okay, I'm gonna stop after 12K at 5K when I was starting to get tired. And then when I'd reach 12K, I'd just keep going anyway. Like, oh, no, I'm fine. I'll just keep going. You know what I mean? Like, I always give myself the option to kind of give up. But when it actually comes to it, I don't actually ever end up giving up. So that's kind of how my life is as well.
I just want to ask for those that are having negative thoughts, what are like 3 different things that they can do to start shifting to more positive thoughts?
I think one thing to realize is, and I've really been there. I used to be, or I've had points in my life at least where I used to be really negative, like really just think the worst was going to happen only constantly all the time for everything. I would be critical and negative about everything, outcomes, people, situations, everything. And and in my head, it was kind of like this perfectionist, which still exists. I am a really like, I'm a bit obsessive and perfectionist about things. Like I'm still a perfectionist about my music. You know, when I'm making like in the studio and doing stuff, I am obsessive and I retain that about myself. But I've learned to compartmentalize and not let that spill into everything. Like I'm not like that about everything because in some things in life you can take easy, you know, like you can just go have a good meal, you know, with your loved one or your friends or whatever and not have to complain about which table you're sitting on in the entire meal. You could just like have a good meal and forget about it. And so you don't need to carry that in every aspect of your life, basically. And when you do that, you shed a lot of weight and you feel a lot lighter and you're more productive because suddenly you have the headspace to be that perfectionist, crazy person in the studio.
That's so important, knowing when to like take a break. And that can be hard for people, but that's like an important practice to have in place. I mean, maybe you reap the benefits of that when you were thinking of quitting and you're just like, okay, let go.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think like when I was comfortable with quitting, I did kind of just let go. And that really just I don't know, it just clears your mind up a little bit. You start getting so stressed. And that's the only thing. I mean, I use it as a tool almost. It's almost like a trick, a way I trick my mind, where I just, you know, the idea of quitting makes me relaxed and just be like, okay, no pressure. And then suddenly you just you just act better in life. You make better decisions all of a sudden because you're relaxed. And that's so important, man. I mean, life is so short. Like, you can't live it being stressed like 24/7, you know?
I feel like sometimes, and I say this, you know, ignoring obviously the tough parts, but I feel like when I've been at my lowest and when I've felt like giving up or whatever it was, like it actually, there is this peace that comes with it. And that is that complete letting go because it's like, okay, I can't go any lower. Like it doesn't get worse than this. So
Yeah.
it's only up. So let's see what happens.
And that's what helps you in bouncing back up then, actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you not get caught up in the canceling and the quitting? Like, how do you use it as a place to feel calm and like not have that pressure?
I think when I do that, I'm kind of telling myself that, but somewhere deep inside, I know I'm not quitting. I'm just like, when you're running after something, you really want it. And you have this attachment with this thing. It could be like success or money or like a relationship or like love or whatever. And you have this attachment. And for me, quitting is like letting go of that attachment primarily. I think like letting go of that attachment sometimes is important. But at the same time, that
Yeah.
attachment is also what drives you towards it.
I would say like the attachment to the goal is real. Like I'll have an idea of what I should get for something or where I should be at this time, and the door will end up changing. And sometimes that's really hard to accept. Like when I thought, okay, this is what it's gonna look like. And I almost feel like I go through a period of mourning for like 2 days of like mourning that future that isn't gonna happen. And then I just, okay, back to it, because those are the purest sort of intentions that you start with, and then it's easy to just get caught up in what it should look like later.
That's really
Yeah.
well put. Yeah. That's a really good point. That when we start like having this attachment towards a goal, we sometimes lose sight of why we started doing something in the first place. I mean, I started doing this because I love writing music and, being in the studio and playing shows sometimes and like all these things. And that's why I'm doing it. And then you have this attachment towards this goal and then you completely forget about that stuff. And I think that just this fact of just letting that go just resets your brain a little bit, and you know you realize that, okay, this is why I was doing it, I can still do this, so I'm just going to keep
Yeah.
doing that and forget about what I was expecting to get. It's also like expectations, right? We have so many expectations in life, but you can't control things beyond a point. Actually, having a goal is actually really good, so a little bit of attachment is not bad. So you don't want to like go completely like have no goals at all, because if you don't really have a short term long term goal, you're just not going to actually get anywhere. So it's good to have goals, but if you go too far with it also, it's going to create a lot of issues, like I said, of attachment and stuff.
100%.
Yeah.
I wanted to wrap up today's episode by asking, over the next 12 months, Prateek, what are your goals and where do you want to see yourself grow, both career-wise and mental health-wise?
This year has been really transformative for me. I don't know why, but it's just a lot of things has changed for me. Like my mental health has never been as good. It's just, I feel the most positive I have in years. I'm just the most energetic I have in years. And I just want to keep pushing that, like just keep getting better at that. I want to be like physically and mentally much stronger every year. One new thing that I've been wanting to do this year is just I want to be fine with taking responsibility for the people around me. I want to be a positive influence on the people around me and the people who are close to me. And this is the first time where I've started really like taking that. And I feel like maybe that's just part of growing up and being, older, but just I want to be there for the people who've been there for me, which I feel like I haven't been there fully always, because I've always been dealing with my own issues. But this is the first time in my life I feel really strong to be there for my friends and my family and the people I love in a really strong fashion. And then, man, yeah, just professionally, I mean, it's just always like my goal has always been nothing, it's never been monetary or numbers and that beyond a point. I just want to make really, really good music. So I just want to keep working on that. And I want to just spread that as far as I can. Those are the two things I do work wise. I try to work on being a better musician, and then I try to do everything I can to just take that to as many people as I can, and just, whatever that takes, whether that's touring or like how we market stuff and the kind of videos I make, as all that is, and it's interconnected, right? Because all a creative process and it's all stuff that like helps me spread it everywhere. So that's kind of like always been my goal, and it's always going to be, I think.
That's amazing, man. I'm excited for you. I feel like that's a place where your mental health is going to skyrocket even more, because like acts of service and thinking about other people in that sense, that's a huge perspective change. And I feel like that's what gives us life. Like when we can give to others and have our cup be full whilst also like being there for people and thinking of them. That's huge.
Well, yeah, thank you so much again for coming today and talking to us and being so open and honest. We really appreciate it.
So, Harrison, how did you find that chat with Prateek, and what is one thing that you learned from it?
I found it really interesting. I think something that I learned was being a perfectionist about everything. You can kind of sometimes learn to let go of certain things, and I think in my life I've really started to do that when it comes to certain areas of my life. Everything needed to be perfect at once. Everything needed to be my way. But now I think over time, I've really just realized, like, does it really matter that much? At the end of the day, you're going to like go home and it's just like vital to your survival for it to be that perfect. And I think that that's something that I've really been thinking about and like letting go of a lot more. Like, it doesn't need to be perfect. You can let go and you can compromise on certain areas, and you can just like, it doesn't need to be exactly your way, because that just brings a lot of stress and anxiety towards me. So that's something that I really learned, that I know Prateek was talking about, being a perfectionist himself, about his journey with letting go, even on small things like where you go to dinner, or like where you hang out, or like doing stuff that's just like not even vital to your work at all. You don't need to have it exactly your way. I think another thing that I found really interesting was letting go of attachment and the attachment of goals. And that's something that's really important, because you kind of like have to mourn this future if you don't achieve that goal, or if this thing or this relationship with this person that you have doesn't happen, then you have to mourn that future that you had in your brain. So kind of removing that and removing that attachment is really important. Still fulfilling your goals, but not being so attached to them that they are attached to your identity, if that makes sense. So you still are a person, you still are you without that other person, or without those goals that you kind of instilled in yourself. And I think that'll be really important, because if you don't ever fulfill them, or if they don't happen, at least you won't feel like you don't know who you are anymore. I'm super excited for our episode next week. If you really enjoyed it, be sure to share, like, subscribe, and share it to a friend if they need to hear kind of Prateek's story and how to deal with anxiety.